What's up, you guys? I hope you're doing very well now. Welcome aboard a new video. Welcome aboard my personal channel. And in case you're wondering as to what channel this is related to the podcast one, I can tell you we want to divide the material in two. So we're going to keep the F1 related material as it's always been there on the podcast channel, and I'm going to put a link into the description below also. So if you're interested in Formula One, interested in the podcast, the videos we've made, you can check those out there. And then on this channel, guys, because F1 is my number one passion, but I'm also interested in other sports. So on this channel, basically, I'm taking the freedom to cover MMA, boxing, and especially the UFC when it comes to MMA. So really looking forward to making these videos and covering some of these other sports that I'm interested in. And also, whenever some idea pops into my mind that feels good enough to make a video about it, then we might be doing even videos about just random stuff. So basically, F1 content as before, it's there on the podcast channel, and everything else is going to be here. Welcome aboard the channel, guys. Moving on to this video in particular, guys, we're going to be talking about boxing today, and I never ever would have imagined that I'm going to say this one day, but we're going to be talking about Jake Paul. So what do I think about the YouTuber turned aspiring pro boxer? What do I think about Jake Paul as a boxer? And what do I think about the absurd event that was Jake Paul versus Ben Askren, which was just a couple of weeks ago? So we're going to be talking about that. Let's actually start from the event. So let's talk about the event, guys. I'm just going to give you the tale of the tape to everybody who maybe doesn't follow boxing or MMA, just so you know who these guys were that were in the boxing ring against one another. So Jake Paul, who actually won the fight eventually, is a YouTuber, social media superstar, whatever you want to call him, turned pro boxer. At least that's what he's kind of trying to do. And prior to this event, he had a pro boxing record of 2-0, 2 wins, 0 losses, but it's debatable whether you can actually call it a professional record, because the earlier fights that he has had, the previous opponents he's faced, have been a fellow YouTuber in the first match, and then there was a NBA player, basketballer called Nate Robinson, who Jake Paul knocked out in the second match. Now, Ben Askren, on the other hand, he is a retired mixed martial artist, comes from a wrestling background. He was a Olympic wrestler before eventually switching into MMA. And in MMA, he has won world championships in one UFC and, one FC and Bellator. And then before retiring, he also fought a couple of times in the UFC. So Ben Askren is definitely a celebrated fighter, a celebrated athlete. Now, guys, I'm very aware that many of you probably don't like Jake Paul too much. I'm not a fan of Jake Paul too much either, but there's one thing I have to give credit for Jake Paul. Credit to Jake Paul for his match picking. Whoever made the decision, whoever was doing the negotiations, I guess he has some managerial team that he kind of plans these things with. But I mean, in terms of picking the opponent, Jake Paul really did a genius move here, because I might be cutting a couple corners here, but basically for somebody who isn't so familiar with boxing, what you want to do if you're Jake Paul is you want to get an opponent who is interesting, and in a nutshell, an opponent, the easiest possible opponent and fight him for the largest amount of money possible. So you want to get a big payday and an easy win, and pick an opponent who you are most probable to beat. But also an opponent who is credible, an opponent who sells pay-per-views, because you don't want, when it comes to the pre-fight press conferences and stuff, when you're trying to sell the fights and entertain people, you don't want to be doing that alone. So you want somebody who is entertaining and who gives you a run for your money at these press conferences. Now, Jake Paul probably was very aware that Ben Askren is a fun guy, entertaining, extremely outspoken. So when he chose Ben Askren, he was 100% aware of these things, and he's also aware that Ben Askren has won championships in MMA, so he is a credible name. However, he has never been known for his striking, and this is where the easiest opponent for the biggest payday argument comes in, because Jake Paul was looking at it thinking, okay, if I have to fight a real fighter, if I have to fight a guy from an MMA background so that people give more credibility to the fight, who am I going to fight? And from Jake Paul's perspective, choosing Ben Askren, who, despite his MMA background, has never been known for striking and is probably the worst guy from MMA, the worst possible boxer you could have from MMA. It's an extremely logical move from Jake Paul, and I can tell you, most probably, this move was definitely calculated. If you ask me about the event, whether the event was good or bad, it's a complicated question, guys, because the event, it depends which perspective you take. If you think about it as a sports event, then it was horrible, to be honest. It was very, very bad. And the reason is, us sports fans who bought the pay-per-view, who tuned in to watch boxing and expected to see boxing, what actually happened was you have one fight here and one fight there, and in between you have like four gigs, like four musical acts in between of each fight, and it just felt like the event was going on forever and ever and ever, and the amount of actual boxing during the event was pretty little. Like most of the time it was just filming Pete Davidson, the stand-up comedian guy who hosted the thing, you know, throwing some jokes here and there, filming Snoop, Dogg, and Mario Lopez and these guys in the commentary booth, and all this extra stuff. And when you're a boxing fan, and when you tune in to watch boxing, especially people who've watched these events before, when it comes to boxing and MMA, there's a kind of traditional way that these events are carried out, and that is that there's basically fight after fight after fight. So two guys get in the ring and they box each other, and then there's like maybe a 10-15 minute break, and then the next guys come in, and there's that rhythm all the time. You know, the tempo of the event is really high, and you get to see lots of boxing action, which is, you know, ultimately what you have paid to see. So, and in the case of this event, especially in the beginning, it was like one fight every 90 minutes. And I'm afraid, you know, you could see on Twitter, Instagram, people commenting on it, like people were really fed up and frustrated. And I can sympathize with them, because me and my friend, we also bought this pay-per-view and we were watching it together, and we were kind of thinking like, credit to the artists, they had some really legit artists up there, but still we were thinking like, why don't you just get these musicians off the stage and get on with the event and get on with the next fight? But if you ask me whether this event was entertaining, then I mean, absolutely. In terms of a entertainment event, it was excellent. It was weird, it was funny, it was crazy. I mean, already the pre-fight press conferences, you had great one-liners, which was to be expected from Ben Askren. One of my favorite ones was when he said, it was actually quite a genius line, when he said, when asked about whether he is concerned of the idea of fighting Jake Paul, Ben Askren answered, well, you know, I'm a world-class athlete, and he's Jake Paul. And I mean, that's a genius line, because the thing is, yes, sir, you are a world-class athlete. You've won championships in 2 different mixed martial arts divisions, and Jake Paul isn't really a pro athlete in that same regard. So in terms of this trash talking thing and the banter and stuff, you know, the most genius things that you can say are actually the things where the opponent can't really counter argue you. And when Ben Askren said that, well, I'm a world-class athlete and his Jake Paul, that's true. And then in the event itself, I mean, well, what can you expect? You have Pete Davidson, the stand-up comedian, hosting it. You have Snoop Dogg, Mario Lopez, all these guys. I mean, it's going to be an entertaining event. Perhaps not the best sports event, but, you know, there you go. Then we get to Snoop Doggy Dogg, Snoop Dogg doing the commentary. Now, in his credit, Snoop does know a lot about different sports. I mean, he's been doing, I think he's even been commentating on some NHL games, and you know, he knows a thing or two about boxing, about MMA. But normally when you're a commentator, you're expected to be objective, you know, unbiased. But Snoop Dogg, it seems he had made a bet before this fight, betting $1 million for Jake Paul. So ultimately, if Jake wins, I guess he gets $2 million. I guess he wins $2 million. Now, as a commentator during the fight, while the fight is going on, you can hear Snoop Dogg just screaming when Jake Paul is on the attack, "Finish him, Jake! Finish him, Jake! Get me my money, Jake!" I mean, it was crazy. Like I said, this event just overall was the most absurd event I've ever freaking seen as a sports fan. So in the fight, well, Ben Askren, he hadn't been doing anything for like 18 months, and he had 11 weeks to prepare for the fight. It seemed as though he hadn't really prepared for this fight too well. So he went there badly prepared, which, you know, pissed many people off. And in the fight itself, Jake Paul knocked him out in the first round, and Snoop Dogg got his money. So credit to Jake for that. Jake Paul definitely taking his training very seriously, wants to become a professional boxer. He had prepared well, trained well for this fight. And Ben Askren, on the other hand, it seemed like he just went in there to get a punch in the face and take the money and go. But not really too much to say about the fight more than that. Like I said, guys, as a sports event, this was a absolute horror show. Very bad, but as entertainment, was pretty brilliant. So thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll have more videos about boxing, MMA, and other things coming your way very soon. Now, don't forget to check out the F1 channel. The link is in the description. Also, don't forget to like the video, leave your feedback in the comment section below, and subscribe to the channel to get notifications whenever a new video appears. And I'll talk to you very soon. Cheers, guys.